sinking wastewater triggers deeper, stronger earthquakes. EOS article. The effects of pumping wastewater from oil and gas extractions may last a decade or even more after the injections stop. The oil and gas industry's practice of pumping wastewater fluids underground for disposal has been implicated in the dramatic uptick in earthquakes in the central United States. We're talking about the New Madrid seismic zone area. Now a new study has found a correlation between the increasing depth of the earthquakes and the rate at which these fluids descend through Earth's crust, a finding that has implications for how much fluids are regulated. This is by Mary Caperton Morton on EOS. Over the past decade, earthquakes in the central United States greater than magnitude 3.0 have increased dramatically because of disposal of oil field wastewater into deep geologic formations. Injecting these fluids under pressure can destabilize faults and in some places trigger hundreds of induced earthquakes a year over magnitude 3.0, some as large as magnitude 5.8 quake that struck Pawnee, Oklahoma in 2016. And as I told you in one of my former videos today, in Korea they had a 6 magnitude from fracking. Studying the mechanisms by which injected fluids triggered earthquakes has been hampered by a lack of accessible information about the composition of the wastewater fluids. This is what Ryan Paulia said, hydrologist at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in Blacksburg, and lead author of a new study published in Nature Communications. He says, so much of that data is proprietary information held by the oil and gas companies. To assess how the density of the fluids may influence their descent, Paulia and colleagues turned to a database maintained by the U.S. Geological Survey that includes typical compositions of wastewater fluids. Some of these fluids have very high dissolved salt content, Paulia said, making the fluids denser and heavier than groundwater found in fault systems. He says, we developed computer models showing that oil field wastewater tends to sink when it has a higher dissolved solids concentration and thus higher density than fluids deep within the Earth's crust, he said. As this high-density wastewater sinks, it displaces the lower-density fluids that naturally reside in the faults and increases fluid pressure, potentially triggering fault movements. The team also analyzed earthquake data collected across several Oklahoma counties and found that earthquakes are getting deeper at the same rate high-density wastewater sinks by about half a kilometer a year. This provides compelling evidence that high-density wastewater is sinking and causing earthquakes to get deeper within the study area, he says. Earthquakes data collected across a broad region of northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas between 2013 and 18 have demonstrated that the overall earthquake rate has been declining since 2016. Paulia and colleagues found that although that may be the case overall, the number of earthquakes over magnitude 4 is increasing in number. These larger quakes tend to strike at depths below 4 kilometers. He said this is likely the result of wastewater sinking and driving up fluid pressure at greater depths. Previous studies have not considered the role of wastewater fluid density on fault systems, said Shemi Ge, a hydrologist at the University of Colorado in Boulder, who was not involved in the new study. He said, in the past we have generally thought of wastewater as just water. This study adds a new dimension. What happens when the wastewater is denser than water? How does it move through the earth? That's a very interesting new perspective. The new study also suggests that fluids pumped underground can trigger earthquakes for over a decade after pumping stops. This is what Paulia said, as the fluids continue to sink to depths beyond 8 kilometers. He says our models also show that high-density oil field wastewater will continue sinking and increasing fluid pressure for over a decade after disposal operations cease. Going forward, both Palia and Gay would like to see more transparency from oil and gas companies about the contents of wastewater fluids. Quote, the composition of these fluids and other permanent information should be incorporated into the permitting and regulatory process, unquote. This is what Palia said. He adds, if more of that data was available, we could learn a lot more about the mechanisms driving these earthquakes. We need more cooperation and collaboration from industry if we're going to understand how these fluids interact with the fault environment, unquote, Gay said. He said, it is surprising how little we know about wastewater fluids, and yet they have such a significant impact on huge regions of the country, an impact that this study shows will not immediately go away after they stop injecting, end quote. This is by Mary Caperton Morton, science writer, 23rd August 2019. The article was updated to correct and more fully explain the graphs. Citation is Morton MC 2019, and this was published August 16, 2019, and it's Creative Commons by NC&D. And this is on Earth and Space Science News, EOS. And this is here at we're at Sizewell Berkeley, at the map showing the west coast, and also New Madrid seismic zone area. New Madrid is right there. And you can see the blue are the today's quakes. Quite a few, as you can see, all along New Madrid seismic zone. This is the area here, Oklahoma, Kansas. And this is where we have a tremendous amount of fracking going on. Right there, Pawnee, Oklahoma, 3.3. And this is, of course, induced. All of this area is pot marked with fracking sites. All right, here we are. Let's just zoom in. Okay. Just at random. Okay, they're not there. There they are. Okay. These white blotches that we have here. As you can see, they're everywhere. Some of them are even more intense, like here, for example. Let's go here. Okay, that's what they look like. And you can pretty much see them from quite far up. Look at that. Amazing. You can see that these two lines are totally... Okay, so that's what they look like. And this whole area is gridded with all these. Look at this. They're even over the mountains, even over mountainous areas. Tremendous. Oh, we can get a better view here. And this one has the pond right next to it. He's got his towers right there. So that's what they look like. Basically, this is it. And this whole area is, of course, riddled with all these. Everywhere. Instead of farms, they have all these going on. Texas looks just like that, by the way. Texas has had some strange quakes as well, having to do with fracking. Where are they? Right there. Near Pecos that we saw yesterday. We did a video on that yesterday. Okay? Monajas, Texas, near Pecos. I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.